Hi friends, you're watching Joel John J YouTube channel, and we have got George C. Murray, who is a global supply chain leader and an ex US Army professional. And we welcome you, George, to our interview. And can you introduce yourself to our viewers?
Sure, Joel. I appreciate the time and being on the show. I'm a global operations supply chain manager, as you alluded to. I've done 3 expat assignments, one in Thailand, one in China, and one in Malaysia. And I've actually wrote 2 books, one called Hired Your Career Search Time in Half, which is starting to pick up based on all the layoffs recently. And then most recently, Ignite, Engage, Retain, which is helping business leaders and professionals really engage their team as well as retain their talent.
Okay, that's so great to know about you. And can you tell a little bit about your experience in US Army serving
Sure.
your country?
Yeah, I served 8 years in the military way back. It's almost a lifetime ago. Got in '86, got out after Desert Storm, Desert Shield. I served in the 101st Airborne Division as well as the 1st of the 15th Infantry over in Kitzingen, Germany. In that short period of time, I saw a lot of the world, including Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and Iraq.
So you have been on the Middle East during your US military operations. So
Yes.
great to know about that. So you have not only served your country, you have served other parts of the world as well. And what's your experience about your coaching and mentor field, and what you like to convey to other coaches and mentors?
Sure. Thank you. Great question. I started coaching folks just in transition individually because I was in transition a few times and I was very frustrated with the whole process. No one wrote a book from the time that you left your last company, whether it was a reduction in workforce or a layoff or a termination, to the next opportunity that you get. There's a lot to process during that time. And so the book is a relatively short read, 132 pages, and it really takes you through the entire process as well as the mental process, because it can be a lot of highs and lows during job search, if that's really all you're doing right now. And so I really encourage to really help folks because of the fact that I consider myself more of a practitioner because I lived it and breathed it as opposed to a theorist. A lot of outplacement firms, the folks just haven't really experienced it, or they haven't experienced it in the last 10 or 15 years. And the job transition market is really a competitive landscape that probably changes every 18 to 24 months.
Okay, that's so great and a great insight from you. And about your current role as strategic operations in supply chain and global operations, what are the main challenges you face, and what you like to convey to others who want to know about this field?
Well, first, supply chain has been a very, very challenging for the last 3 years through COVID. There's been a lot of products that have gotten extensive long lead items, been really challenging in the logistics field with all the problems and challenges the organization is having and experiencing. And I say, from an operations standpoint, it's really, retaining the talent that you have and developing them is a challenge with a lot of businesses. Prior to the last couple of months with a lot of technical firms like Google, Amazon laying off, it's been a challenge to truly keep the people that you want employed in your organization versus jumping ship. And so that's another challenge that both operations leaders as well as overall businesses are challenged with. And that really kind of alludes to my second book, Ignite, Engage, Retain, is how do you really ignite a workforce, getting them all engaged? Because right now the national average is, only 18% of their folks are engaged. And then the most important thing is, of the high talent that you have, how do you keep them from jumping ship to a maybe potential competitor?
Okay, great. It's a great insight on supply chain. And being an expert on Lean and Six Sigma, what's the difference between Lean and Six Sigma, and what you like to, what everyone should know about these two programs, Lean and Six Sigma?
Well, I tell people as a master black belt, or excuse me, a black belt myself, is that most organizations really want to jump right into Six Sigma without understanding the costs and the opportunities of business. So I'm an Army guy. I'm a very simple person. And so I try to break it down into simple terms. Most benefit from businesses can really benefit from the lean aspect. It's really process improvement, reducing cycle times, including, Kanban systems, both in the supply chain as well as in the manufacturing, to condense their lead time to be more competitive to the market. Where the lean or the Six Sigma side is really, using data analytics and using all the tools in the Six Sigma black belt, really takes a higher level. So I'd say is, if you're looking to start a journey, I always tell people it's best to start with lean because you can get a lot of quick, I would say quick wins, as opposed to really just jumping right into the Six Sigma. I would say Six Sigma is probably maybe the next second or third step in the overall evolution of improvement in a business.
Okay, that's great to know that first we have to start with lean and then move to at Six Sigma. And then you have wrote two books. One is Hired, which is for, I think it's for getting a job, how we should prepare
Right.
ourselves to get a job. And another one thing for the employers, after getting employees hired, how to ignite them, engage them, and retain them on the workforce. So can you talk a little bit about your two books? And I think it's available on these platforms, Audible,
Correct.
Amazon, and Amazon Kindle. Okay.
Yes.
So kindly talk about those.
Sure. As I alluded to in the initial discussion, my first book, Hired, was really kind of my struggles in job transition. Like most people, they experience their first job transition in their mid 40s, and I was 47 at the time. And it was one of the times where you kind of built up a career over a period of time. You've always had a next opportunity to grab. Well, this time there wasn't there. And even though in the US where I reside, the national unemployment rate was 4.6% back in 2016, I really thought the job market was going to be very quick to find another opportunity. But I didn't know this job search process. And so I learned through trial and error in the processes and developed a process so that if and when this would happen again, I would be better prepared. So I went back and took all those notes, and I wrote the book based on all the inputs I've gotten from more than probably 700 folks that I interviewed in the whole job search process. So coming up with best practices, and the exciting thing for me is, writing a book that, basically transforms over different cultures in different geographical locations. I remember the second year the book was out, it was January 17th, and somebody called me right out of the air, from Australia, and said, well, first of all, I didn't know that your actual phone number in the book really connected you. I really commend you. He says, second of all, I just want to tell you how important your book was to help me in the whole mental process of that job search transition. And it really helped me focus and get my job, as the book alludes to, in half the time I would have expected. And to me, that was just really kind of a reinforcement of what I really intended the book to be, is really to be a good roadmap for people who are either starting in job search or maybe struggling in a long-term job search.
Okay, fine. And what about your next book, Ignite, Engage, and Retain?
Yeah, so the second book is really what I would have considered my signature book. It takes into account my 25 years plus experience in operations and global supply chain, including my military experience. And you probably have read a lot of articles maybe over the last 15 years of there is a lack of employee engagement in companies, right? Well, I have come in back, let's say, than less desirable leaders. And what I found was it's not so much the employees that are disengaged, it's the leaders that are disengaged that's causing the employees to be disengaged. So what my book helps leaders and businesses is really to identify those gaps, and then more importantly, be able to develop kind of gap analyses, and more importantly, improve those gaps so that they can ignite their workforce, focusing them on some of the, the most critical, important things that are going on in the business, but all the while also aligning what the individual's needs and desires are so that you can finally retain those people. I think gone are the days where companies, are going to hire a person and expect them to work 20 plus years. But through a good, successful process of engagement and development and aligning them with the overall goals and objectives and developing a succession plan for employees, you can retain those people for 5 to 7 years. And I think that that's a win right now, where, up until a couple of months ago, companies were losing people, in the first 45 days of hire. They were also losing people that were really great talent because of the market got so well for them. They could jump and find an opportunity and making 20% more. So it really comes back to, how do we get the leaders engaged and focused so that they can really get their teams focused and engaged? And one of the chapters I outlined, there's 9 different types of leadership. And what I found is it's important for a leader, true leader, not a manager, but a leader, to understand when to use those different types of leadership.
Okay, great to know about your books. And also I saw that you are into providing speaking and coaching workshops. Can you talk a little bit about that and how people to get in contact with you to attend the workshops?
Sure. Well, I was doing a podcast similar to this. It was about helping people in job transition every few weeks. And I shut that down in December because here in the US, anybody who really wanted a job had a job, right? And then what happened is everybody's read a lot of the articles and news recently. A lot of the tech firms have been doing this mass layoffs. So I basically started up a different platform where I've actually provided free webinars to kick off your job search. And I think the next one is coming up on May 13th. So if anybody is interested, they can reach out to me, provide their email, and I can send them the link. But it's really to kind of understand the roadmap for networking. If I'm an introvert, how do I start networking? All those tips. And then beyond that, I provide ongoing coaching and support through a process, whether they want to just do a month or they want to do 3 months, but it's more competitive, or it's a better price point for than a traditional outplacement firm. Here in the US, there's an average, it ranges anywhere from 7,000, if you're paying individually, as opposed to the company paying for your outplacement, you can pay up from 7,000 US all the way up to 15,000. And mine's much, much, much lower than that. And I do this because I really feel for the people who are out there, because I've experienced the ups and downs and the depression and, when am I going to find a job, all those things. So I can really relate to people. But more importantly, those coaching sessions are one-on-one. It's not, just a bunch of group of people, doing all the same thing, because what works for me might not work for you. And then the other one is I do for business owners, and that's really on the Ignite Engage side. I've got 5 programs that really help businesses, develop a level of trust and establish better communication styles, and then develop succession plannings. And then one of the things I really love about the business side, that I've got a project that I do for businesses, and it kind of gives my military experience, but not what you and I would consider a war. But I tell people, we're going to create a war in your business. And the acronym to WAR for you and I is with all resources. So if a company were able to focus on their biggest problem and take each department, a person of skill and talent, and focus on that, in 12 weeks or less, we can have a significant improvement in that particular goal. So here's an example. I was working with a company with their on-time delivery never got better than 65% in the last 3 years. And they had a backlog of $3 million that they just couldn't shake. In 10 months, we were able to finally reduce a backlog of $3 million down to $250,000 US. But more importantly, the on-time delivery ramped up all the way to 98.5% just in 9 weeks. And prior to that, for 3 years, it never gotten better than 65%. So we kind of take this tactic of creating a war. It's fun. We get everybody engaged. And most importantly, we're using a lot of the things we talked earlier about in this podcast, We talk about lean principles. We teach everybody, and we also use a little bit of lean or Six Sigma data collection and analytics to really drive our best results.
Okay, George, is that email ID and phone number you shared over on this PDF in which they have to contact you for attending your webinar?
Yes.
Okay, so let me show that as well. So those who are watching this, you can contact George on this email ID and phone number to join his webinar. And George, thank you very much for.
Well, one point I would like to close with is I just had a person I was working with that I worked with before. He reached out to me. He just got recently laid off by a semiconductor company. And, you know, he calls out to me. It was April 6th. They laid him off on March 29th. And his name is Yogi. He's actually here in the US under an HB1 visa. And he's like, George, I've got to find a job in 60 days or I'm going to have to go back to India. And I said, well, that's a challenge. He goes, but I also need the HB1 support. And I said, wow, that's a big challenge. And he's like, and I only got 30 days of severance. So on March 29th of this year, just a few weeks ago, his severance ran out, and we worked profusely on the talents as well as the structure that I outlined in his job description. And he followed it, or the coaching, he followed it to a T. And he got an offer on May 1st, 34 days from the time that he was let go to the time he got an offer, 35 days. And oh, by the way, we were able to negotiate them supporting his HB1 visa.
Oh, great to know.
It was great.
Yeah, really great to know about that you supported a person. And another one thing I like to ask about is here what in India we hear is there is also unemployment in US, and you were saying like if in US they want to be here, they'll be here. But here we are hearing like it's about 3% of the people in US are unemployed. Is that true? And what's your opinion about that?
Yeah, in the US, the unemployment rate has kind of ticked up over the last couple of months with a lot of the tech firms, but it's still it's probably an all-time low. Not, you know, it's going to be a little bit more challenging. So to give you a kind of a time frame, pre-COVID, it was taking a professional like an engineer or any way up to a CEO anywhere from 7 to 12 months to land their next opportunity. This is pre-COVID. Post-COVID, just up until 4 months ago, it was taking people probably about 3 to 4 months. Now, given the fact the last couple of months, it's really ticked up, it's still taking them 4 to 7. So it's far lower than pre-COVID still. And the overall, we've got a baby boomer generation that's retiring globally at 65,000 people a day. That's a lot of people. And there's only 35,000 people coming into the workforce every day. Oh. So there's still going to be a gap of demand on high talented folks.
Oh, this is the first time I'm coming to know that 65,000 people are retiring and only 35,000 is coming in. So it's really a great insight for us. And for those who are listening on podcast, you can search as Joel John Jay YouTube channel and watch this video as well. And those who want to get the guidance of George, you can contact him on the number or email ID so that he will be able to connect you on his webinars. And thank you very much, George, for coming us. And you please give a thumbs up and share this video with your friends and all your people on social media, and also share your valuable comments and questions. And George, thank you very much for coming to the show. And we are ending up with and say bye and ask you our viewers to subscribe and support our channel as well.
Joel, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Bye-bye.